the nuclear family, nothing beats it. But when men win, everyone wins. Like if I'm the dad that I'm called to be and I'm the husband I'm called to be, guess who are going to win? My children. And guess what happens when I'm not?
Every single individual has a story to tell, and they're great stories that need to be heard.
I want every listener to know they have the ability to change the world.
Welcome to the 1720 Podcast.
What's up, Mountain Movers? Welcome back to the 1720 Podcast. This week, we're honored to have Matt Shelton as our guest, founder of Freed People, and we've had a few former guests that serve on the board, Sam Russo and Paul Ficina, come on. Avid fan Ryan Davis, he's also serves on the board. All three of these guys have spoken so highly of you and the mission and the purpose, and we're excited to share this with our Mountain Mover tribe because this tribe is a bunch of doers, they're a bunch of givers, and they got a heart to give once their eyes are open to what's happening out there. And we're gonna get into this today, but first, just want to introduce Matt. Matt, welcome to the show.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here, guys. Now let's activate a bunch of doers. How about we do that?
Well,
Let's do
yes, in on that.
Yeah,
we'll get that going. Okay, so usually the way we start, in lieu of some long bio intro, is just let you intro yourself. So I'll give you a second to think on that one. But softball question: who's Matt?
Man, Matt is a pretty simple guy. Matt is someone that's on fire for Jesus. I'm 50 years old, married, got 4 kids, live in the thriving metropolis of Maypearl, Texas. And man, just have a story and have an opportunity to demonstrate the heart of a father that's been demonstrated to me. And so we get to do that at Freed People, but man, I've been blessed to work with some amazing people, understanding leadership from a bunch of different perspectives, been part of just all the things that have helped shape me and mold me into the person I am today. And so however good or bad that is, that's kind of who Matt Shelton is.
Yeah, man, I love a good journey story, right? Like, how did you get to where you are and stuff that shaped you along the way? So, and in our intro, I don't listen to much anymore, but our intro says like everybody has a story.
Yeah.
So lay one on us, man. Like, tell us that story that gets you to where you are.
Story got me where I'm at. Man, if I'm honest, it's a story of flaming out. It's a story of destruction. It's a story of what was meant to take me out didn't. And it's a story that if you lead to the threshold of your pain, you better tighten up and you better get ready because the pain was significant. And so, man, just about 6 years ago, went through a really dark period of life that was testing me on every front. And it was meant to take me out. But, man, in that space, I was able to find a good father who, at the end of myself, when I had reached the bottom, he was there. And I'm going to tell you, when he meets you there, not in anything that you've done great and not of any performance or production that I value, but when he's met you there in a space where you have gotten to the end of yourself and he meets you with a love that doesn't make sense, it changes things.
Yeah.
Was he there before that?
He was, man. I found Jesus at an early age and, probably 8 years old, and so it got real though about 6 years ago, man. Isn't that something? Like you can read the back of a baseball card, but man, when you get in the arena, it's a little bit different, right? Like when you feel the dirt between your toes and it's just a different thing. And so I think you can, at least this is my story, I can understand theory and concept and theology, but man, when it's experiential, it changes things. And that's something that people can't out theology you on, is your experience and relationship with a good father.
Yeah, there's something about the idea of, like, we all want to learn, and that's part of our mission, frankly, and message outward is like learning from that story, for the purposes of helping folks avoid it and learn and listen and lean in and stuff like this. But, and Kevin says this from time to time, like, there's no substitute for the dirt between your toes.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for it. And
no,
so like to keep out of it and hope people avoid it, but sometimes that's where you find it, man.
Gosh, man. I mean, majority of my life, I built a kingdom of comfort, right? I mean, that's what we do, right? We build a kingdom of comfort. And man, when that comfort is taken out and I'm able to live the way that I believe I was destined to live, the way that God knit me together in my mother's womb, I just don't believe we were designed to live as an animal in a cage. I believe we were designed to live like I'm going to experience animals in the wild, like just that guttural feeling of getting things done and being like an apple tree doesn't work hard to create apples. It just does what it does, right? It's free. And just that simplistic understanding of, trying to understand who I am and why I'm here.
We were talking a little bit about this off air, about kingdom of comfort, and you see folks at church and you know their story, and may have played a part of their story, and there is no comfort in their journey. However, hands up, tears of joy, just pure faith, and to be vulnerable. Like if I was in their situation and their story, I don't think I would. I'm not sure I would be there because I've built a kingdom of comfort, and it's a interesting thing to reflect on and see where your faith is.
Man, and that's the truth. I was listening to a guy, and he said, I think we as Americans, Western culture says we're as free as it gets in terms of understanding who we are in Jesus. But he said, I've traveled the entire world working with CIA, and he said, what I've learned is if I want to be free, I want to live in China. You know why? Because those guys will die for their faith. Mm-hmm. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty challenging, right?
Right.
Like my Christian philosophy is look at my house, look how good God is. Mm-hmm. Look at my 2 cars, look at my 1.7 kids. Man, Jesus is so good. Am I willing to die for it? I don't know. Don't take my car though. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's real.
Yeah.
Man, so much of that is like just rifles right now. I'll tell you 2 stories that are probably too deep, but I'm going to tell them anyway. I'll tell the surface of 2 stories that are very deep, just for the conversational purposes. There is a spot in a journal in my drawer where the primary thought I wrestled with that day is, I think exactly what it says is comfort my unifying theory. I think that's what I wrote down. Mm-hmm. Wrestling with the idea of like, is that like what I'm angling towards always? Like I get so frustrated by things that like take me off course. I get so grumpy when I got to stop and put air in my tire. So I need to find a way to not have to air up my tire. Is that like where all my focus is just angling towards being comfortable?
It's good.
So and I want to circle back because like that is deep and I want to hear that. The other thought is, and this is a crazy idea, but sometimes at church, like I'll just get this idea where it's the craziest thought, but I'll think if a gunman busted into the door right now, like we're in church, like message is going on. Gunman busted into the door right now. And then you can play that forward. Would you die for it today?
Yeah.
And sitting in worship. And dude, sometimes you wrestle with it. You're like, I could get out of here.
Yeah.
Or the police. And then stop. You're all lined up on the stage. What now?
Yeah.
And so those 2 ideas you just said like just came together like a rocket ship.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we go from there, but I am interested in like maybe we unwind that story a little bit and talk about the kingdom of comfort and building it and how you got there and all that stuff. But I don't know. It's your story. I'll let you tell it however you want.
Cool. Well, one of the things I failed to mention is I prayed a prayer and asked God, I said, would you tell me who I am? And I sat there with a pen and paper, just ready for him to answer. I'm going to tell you, if the Bible says my sheep hear my voice, right? And so there's a lot of times where I don't hear his voice.
Yeah.
But man, when you sit there with the pen and paper with the audacity that believes that if I'm a sheep, I hear his voice, there's something about that. But when I prayed that prayer, and this doesn't sound very religious and that's cool, but I heard militant sheepdog. You're a militant sheepdog. And I'm just going to tell you, man, like what you just said, when a gunman breaks in, you better know who you are. Mm-hmm. Like you better know who you are, because if you know who you are, you know how you're going to respond in that moment. And, but also the clarity of that is, man, I'm a militant sheepdog and there's a lot of cool things that come with that. Mm-hmm. And, that's a sword that can do some good things. But I'm going to tell you also, when I use that superpower for me, it's super destructive. So, in a redeemed version, man, I'm going to tell you, God does some amazing things when I don't get in the way. But man, if I make it about me, not good.
I'm interested in like finding Jesus at 8.
Yeah.
Like how's that like? Because I think maybe there's a pinpoint. Maybe we draw a line to it. I don't know. So take us back to there. Like,
Yeah. So, man, I'm a young man. I grew up here in the Hurst Hills, Bedford area, and my dad was a deacon at a big church, and I did what every little 7 or 8 year old was supposed to do, which is find Jesus, right, and then go to RAs and GAs and memorize scripture and
shoot a bow and arrow.
Yeah, that's right, and then try to sin less. That was it, and so that was a man. I love Jesus. I didn't know how much he loved me. I didn't know that he actually left the 99 for the one. I understand the story, but I didn't feel it till I got to the end myself. Like, man, when I'm young, man, I'm seeing some stuff that I don't really understand. I'm praying through some things that I don't really understand. I see Jesus sometimes. I don't see Jesus a lot. I don't hear his voice much, but I know I'm supposed to do that, right? I'm supposed to do all this. And man, I am convicted when I sin, when I do things wrong, right? Not real sure what to do with that because some of it just keeps happening. Like, yeah, man, God, I'm sorry again. And hey, I'll probably be sorry in about 20 more minutes too. But like, what does that look like? Like if we're, and man, I don't want to get too fast, but like if repentance is what in the Greek, change your mind, change the way you think, right? Well, I don't really understand what I'm supposed to think. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry again.
Shame, guilt.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, God, I'm sorry, but I'll probably be back here in about 10 minutes, And so, man, I think growing up, man, God was real to me, but as real as I knew how to be real with God, right? And how I viewed God. I viewed God as this thing up in the air that, man, you better not screw up, Matt, because when you screw up, guess what, man? He's got a big hammer.
Yeah,
and
flood the whole place.
That's right. He's ready to take me out. And so, man, that was really how I kind of worked through a lot of growing up. Man, I tried to sin less. I tried to look the part. I tried to serve. I tried to do a lot of things, but I'm not real sure that I ever really I don't know that I had met him in a way that I could tangibly feel the love of a good father.
Okay, questions. Well, one question.
Yeah.
Why?
Why what?
Why did you not have that understanding earlier?
Yeah.
And I got a couple of ideas. And the reason I ask is because we all got kids and like the idea of that, right? Of managing and parenting around that, right? I mean, could be parents. It could be orthopraxy, like what they're teaching you at church isn't leading you towards that. It could be adolescent stubbornness. It could any of those things or collection thereof. But like, why?
What I heard a lot was the things I needed to do, right? To be a Christian. And man, I'm a producer and I love producing, right? That's what I do. So I can work real hard at producing. And where that led me was to a place that didn't see a lot of breakthrough and didn't see a lot of it's felt I burned out. There were cyclical, just failures cyclically that might last days, weeks, months, but just never that doing was it was behavior modification is what I'd probably call it. I was really focused on what I was doing. I wasn't as focused on understanding who I was. When my heart changed, my behavior changed. Repentance changed the way you think. Okay, what am I changing from and what am I changing to? Like, that's real. Like what is that? And so, man, through some of this of late, I've really gotten to better understand who I am, what I was thinking, and then where I need to shift that thinking to.
Mm-hmm. That's a powerful perspective. That's a circle on focus on doing, not who I am. I feel like I'm in that trap now.
Yeah, it can happen. Who I am informs what I do. Why am I so concerned about what I do? But that's what I heard a lot at church. That's what I heard, as a producer mindset that can work professionally and all these good things happen, or I can grow up in sports and man, when I've had a good game, everybody loves me.
Oh yeah.
I mean, all that's great, right? And so producing becomes kind of my Christian walk. It kind of becomes how I see Jesus. When I sin less, I think he loves me more.
Mm.
When I sin more, I think he might be a little disappointed at me or with me. And so that was a lot of kind of the dynamic of how I saw Jesus for most of my life, honestly.
And that breaking
It's,
point's 6 years ago.
Yeah.
That turning point, you're seeing unconditional love in that moment. With that, and I don't know how much you want to share about that moment or turn around.
Man, I'll just share and you can take out what you just flush whatever doesn't make sense. How about that?
Yeah.
But man, I was blessed. I've grown up and, finished high school, went on to college, didn't go to college for the reasons that the dean said I should go to college. So they asked me to leave. Left there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Funny way to say it. It's not funny, but it's a funny way to say it. Yeah.
That's lipstick on a pig. Yeah. And so, man, I leave, from there, get into the business world and experience more success than what I ever thought I would, right? Not that I had huge aspirations, but more success than what I figured. But then 6 years ago, man, my paradigm changed. And so what happened in that moment is I went through a divorce, right? I'm married for 21 years. I'm 50 years old now, but married for 21 years and it broke me, right? My hobby was my family. And there was, and I lost it. A lot of my identity was wrapped up in my family, being a father, being a husband, and I lost it. And so, yeah, that's what happened 6 years ago. And yeah, that'll help you get to the end of yourself pretty quick.
Okay. The identity, like losing your identity, that's to me, that is huge. Again, like that just rings in my head, and it's different. It's different for me.
Yeah.
And the stories all play themselves out differently for everybody. But there's been multiple times in my life where I've wrestled with the loss or challenge to or redefining of my identity.
Yeah.
And it sends you down, and maybe it's unique to dudes, or maybe it's unique to dudes who are a particular archetype or something, but something about that changing or faltering, because it was never in the right spot anyway, that'll shake you. That'll send like reverberations to your core.
Yeah, it did. And there was what I'm finding on this identity run is anything that I can get identity through that's around me or horizontal is going to fail me. And if I'm asking my wife to meet that void, I'm setting her up for failure. If I'm asking anybody in my life to meet a need of filling me with identity, I'm setting them up for failure. And what I found in that, when I got to the end of myself and I experienced the love of a good father, man, I was sharing with you that, I was going through some hard times, and I had a mentor buddy of mine say, do you think God can handle how frustrated and angry you are? And I know this isn't very Christian, I'm sorry, but he said, do you know that he can take your anger? I said, I don't know if he can. You don't know how much anger I have. And so I took him up on it and was sitting at a Chili's parking lot in Burleson, Texas, and screamed a lot of things at God for 30 minutes like a crazy man would. And I know I don't know you guys, so you guys might be thinking, man, this dude's lost his mind.
Oh,
0%.
0%. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, at the end of that venting of an insane man in the moment was a good father. In that moment, I hadn't produced enough. I hadn't done enough good. I hadn't been at the church enough. Like, none of that was a thing. What was a thing is I was at the end of myself and he was there. Man, I'm going to tell you, that is a game changer. That was a game changer for me. And that was where really my relationship was really, that's where my healing started. And that's where I feel like relationship, I really understood at a different level after that day.
Mm-hmm. How did he meet you?
Oh, that's it. Like, that's the question right there.
Like, you're down. What was it?
Yeah. So, man, you can imagine how crazy I looked in my truck. Yes. I hope nobody saw me that knows who I am. And, man, I'm just screaming like a banshee. And so, in the Chili's parking lot, like, I know people here. And, so like, I'm finished, and dude, the Prince of Peace, the peace that passes all understanding, took away the anger, the hurt, the bitterness, the rage. everything that had meant so much to me was falling all around me. And he met me there with the peace that passes all understanding that said, you're good enough. I love you. I've always loved you. And I think in that moment, I think sometimes you talked about growing up. I felt like I was pleasing God when I was doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
I never really understood that just me being his beloved son was enough.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I think I experienced that. That makes sense?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. There's something about, to me, I'm doing that thing where I tell a story on top of a story. I don't mean to do it, but there's something about, I didn't remotely pick this up until I had kids. There's something about being a father, to me, that permitted me to have like a brief glimpse into what that father feels like toward me. Right?
It's good, man.
I was telling a story the other day about a friend of mine has a very challenging kid and dealing with some difficult stuff around that challenging kid. We were talking with a buddy about it and just saying, like, but what if that was, and I said, well, what if that was, insert your kid here? Like, I would absolutely do what that person's doing. I would absolutely stop what I was doing to help that person. I would absolutely sacrifice myself or my own to help that kid out, irrespective of what they're being crazy. This kid in this instance, me in our brilliant, is crazy. And I would stop everything and go pick him up from Crazy Town and bring him home.
That's right.
And it's only just being a dad that lets me think that.
Gosh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man. I even look at the prodigal son story, right? Like that story could be called the good father story, because, man, without a good father, like, I think, to me as a father,
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about, like when you see your children struggle, you want to go rescue them, right? Like Helicopter 101, like, hey, I'm here and I'm for you.
Yeah.
And the good father could have gone to get his son, right? The prodigal son, and gotten him back in the house, but his heart would still be out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, there is the challenge of a father is being able to tell your kids what Jesus said and trust in the Holy Spirit to work that out. And that is a hard place sometimes. Just like what happened in my life, man. Just like what I ran my parents through. I mean, man, those poor, they're still alive, thank God. But man, I ran them through the ringer.
Yeah.
But man, but anyway, yeah.
You think God was just waiting for you to get real and needed you
I guess so. And
to get authentic and how you've truly felt?
And
that was your prodigal son moment?
I think so, man. I think I didn't even realize I wasn't trying to lead in my mind, an ineffective Christian walk. I just was doing what I knew to do, trying to do the right thing, trying to sin less, instead of understanding relationship with God. And so, man, in that broken moment, he met me there. And then all of a sudden, I started believing who he said I was. And I'm going to tell you, when I started believing who he said I was, that's when my whole world changed, because I believe you're going to do whatever you believe that you are.
Mm.
And I am no longer focused on what I do. That's behavior modification, right? Like, behavior modification is going to come and go. But man, when I'm working on something and and I'm working on it, and I'm proud of this thing, my wife comes up and she's like, taps me on the shoulder. And she's like, "What'd you do that for?" And I'm like, "Oh," but, everything inside me wants to just utter something that I shouldn't utter. But then I'm like, "Matt, why are you feeling that way? Like, what is the root of that? Like, I don't think she's here to make you feel a way, but what is it?" And so that's what I'm talking about, of who I am, man. I want to talk, God, who am I? Like, who am I in that moment? Why am I believing a lie that would make me respond in a way that I don't want to respond to my wife?
Again, the 17,000th super intelligent thing in the last 22 minutes is why do I feel that way? Like, when you have that, what's the root cause? And if you take 2 seconds to think, like, why does that make me why am I so mad that my tires in my car need air in them? Why does that make me so mad?
Yeah.
Just take a second and think about it. And you'll start to unpack, like, the and like the root cause analysis has a real business way of saying like, what is it deep down inside in there that is it pride? Is it, what's the real problem? Aaron Duncan said to me one day, it's a guy you don't know, he's in my small group at church. I was talking about how I'm mad all the time. He's like, dude, you're not mad all the time. You have you have a control problem. I was like, yeah, that hurts a little bit, but I think you might be right, And so anyway, the point of that is just being like, you can't live at the surface of that thought. You have to live at the deeper root of that thought to get to the problem, to begin to solve it, to fix the identity, to get headed in the right direction, blah, blah, blah. You just said it. I said it differently, but yeah, it's awesome. That's super good.
And the reflecting, so on the change, the change from the hard right turn, you start reflecting, who am I? And does answering that question start shaping your purpose going forward?
You bet it does. Yeah. I'm going to tell you the biggest thing I've learned here of late is this, and I'll make it quick. But if you've got the finished work at the cross, right? Finished work at the cross.
Mm-hmm.
I was a dead man made alive, right? I was a slave to sin. Now, what's it say? I'm a slave to righteousness. All things pass away. Old things pass away. All things became new, right? Okay. So repentance, change the way you think. So in that moment where I am used to conviction of sin leading me to shame and condemnation, which is the old man that he's already died for. Well, that vicious cycle addiction of shame and condemnation is what leads to a lot of repeated sin. And that's what I experienced in my life. And in that moment, what I believe repentance doesn't have to be, man, I'm just so sorry, all the things. Like, if repentance has changed the way you think, what if you share something that just rocks my world? And I'm like, oh, I got it now. Like, I believe that's repentance. I don't believe repentance is a destination. It's a lifestyle. Like, like I want to think different. Like I want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Like I want to think different. And so I say all that to say, if I've been made new and the finished work at the cross says I am no longer a slave to sin, you know what that means? That means I've been made righteous. You know what that means? And now all of a sudden conviction to sin is not leading me to shame and condemnation anymore. But I actually am a new man, and I've been made righteous. And what do righteous people do? To your point, righteous people, Colossians says, self-control. All right, God, you know what, man? I failed in that one. But you know what? Man, you've made me new. And you know who I am? I'm a man that has self-control. I'm a man who's gentle.
Right.
I'm a man who's faithful. I'm a man who's full of joy. I'm a man full of kindness. And man, I'm going to tell you, when that conviction of sin can lead you to a place like that, all of a sudden you look a little bit more like Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense. That's what I'm going through in my world right now.
Well, and not to be mistaken, it's not easy.
No.
Like, it's not like, you tell me, but it's not like, I got Chili's parking lot, got to the bottom, saw things different, and boy, it is smooth after that. That's not the story, man. It's right. Like, no, now it's like, well, I'll tell a story myself because I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
I 3 times today deleted a superheater email that old me would have completely hit send on.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not who I am. I'm not that guy. Boy, but I do want to send it because I need everybody to know what's up. No, stop. You're not the guy. Delete it. Kindness. I'm going to choose kindness. And it stunk because like my flesh wanted to be like,
you bet.
I wanted to bring the heat because I can do that sometimes. And I was like, no. I just be kind.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
You know what's cool about David in the Bible? Every time,
a lot of stuff.
Oh my God. And a lot of stuff not, right?
Yeah, right.
Like every time he was successful, you know what the differentiator was? He sought the Lord.
Yeah.
Every time he wasn't, you know what he did? Whatever he thought he should do in the moment. Like that's so me, right? That's what you're talking about. Like, right, hey, just give me the sword and let me go to work.
Right.
Start swinging here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Just give me the sword and let me go to work. That was this morning. And I might have deleted it 3 times.
Yeah.
Anywho, not about me.
So how do you make this career shift? Like you Interstate Battery, Powerhouse Construction, I believe was it.
That's it.
And somewhere post this 6 years ago moment, Freed People comes on board. Like,
yeah.
something had to happen to ignite that fire.
Yeah. So, man, I go through that divorce. I'm rocked. Man, I was with Powerhouse, and they're a project management firm, and they do a lot of good work. They've grown, so much. I was with them for 10 years, just blessed to be a dull knife in a, drawer of sharp knives. And so, man, just got to do that for a long time and left there, and wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to change. There were some changes that happened there, and I was ready to move on, and they were ready for me to move on. And so there was a corporate opportunity that I had to potentially make more money than I'd ever made. And then there was a buddy in ministry, and he's like, "Man, Matt, you don't work there anymore." I'm like, "No." He's like, "We'd love to talk to you about ministry." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, but no thanks." I'm like, I love sausage. I just don't want to know how it's made.
How long ago is this?
This is 6 years ago.
Okay, so this is meeting you right there.
This is it. And so man, I interview with this corporate gig, and they're like, "Hey, we love you, but hey, we want to do this personality thing, right? And really understand who you are." And so I'm like, "Okay." And so I complete it, and I'm like, "Lord, you know what? I'm going to answer this thing as honest as I can. And I want to crash and burn if this is not where I need to be. And you know what? If it's where I need to be, hey, let's just see what happens." Yes, right. So I take the test. 3 weeks goes by and crickets. And I'm like, wow. So I am definitely not the guy that anybody values. And so, yeah. I go through that. Meanwhile, I'm talking to my buddy in full-time ministry, and he's telling me about this Answer International. And Answer International, they're doing some crazy cool things in the world of anti-human trafficking overseas in 13 different countries. And I'm like, man, I'm so ill-equipped for that. Man, it sounds amazing, right? Like, man, like if I had a dream when I was 7 years old, that's what I'd be doing. Like, oof, like, man, maybe. Man. And then all of a sudden, that identity, militant sheepdog. Oh my gosh, like, holy cow! Like, what if my God-given identity and being a beloved son and the way He created me and my DNA lines up with what I do professionally? Like, what could happen there? And I'm like, wow. So I tell these guys, man, I'm going to come meet you Thursday at this ministry thing. I didn't have a lot of options, right? I mean, this other thing had crashed and burned. Well, Wednesday, Bob calls me from this corporate thing. He's like, "Man, COVID happened. It took a while, but man, you're exactly who we're looking for." And I'm like, "Man, I'm sorry, but I think my heart's gone a different way." And he's like, "Well, is it in commercial insurance? It's in his space." I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Well, can you tell me what it is?" I'm like, "Oh God." I'm like, "Anti-human trafficking?" And there's this long, awkward silence. And he's like, "Good luck with that." So that's how it started, man. And I hope you're listening today, Bob. And
is this the Bob story from earlier?
No,
we'll
Bob.
get to that.
Oh, okay.
It's a different Bob?
Different Bob.
Okay.
Different Bob. My bad.
No, that's okay.
And so man, I went in there Thursday. I said, "Look, we haven't talked money. We haven't talked any of that. And I don't even know for sure if you want to hire me, but I want you to know I'm all in. Whatever it looks like, I'm all in." And they're like, "Okay, well, all right. Well, you're hired." And so
remind me who you are.
There's no personality test, right? You didn't see me in Chili's parking lot.
That's right.
Can I interject a thing here? I know I'm doing it again. I always have this. Sometimes I hear this like, "What did everybody else see?"
Yeah.
Right. Like when I'm driving down the road singing, I think like, "What does everybody else see?"
Yeah.
I had that thought when you were telling the chili story, but the time wasn't right. But like somebody drove by and was like, "My goodness, that guy," like he thinks you're giving it to somebody on the phone or something like that.
They
like,
gypped him on the queso.
Right. He did not get his big mouth bites or whatever. Like, so, anyway, it's funnier now than it was then. But yeah, what did they see? Anyway. Yeah. So no personality test here. You're all in.
That's right, man. I'm all in. And so it's just, a couple of days in, I get my first recovery opportunity. And it's actually a girl in Arkansas. And she's this young girl, and she's 18, and she's in a homeless camp, and she's being trafficked and sold within this homeless camp. And I worked through that, and we call, between me and her advocate, we call 63 different organizations, including churches, trying to find a place for this girl. Well, does she have insurance? No, she doesn't have anything.
Right.
Do you know her social, or does she have her driver's license? No, she has nothing. And so I just started experiencing a little bit here of the complexity and the difficulty of, man, it's hard to get service, even from people who provide service.
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, I start traveling the world, and, we have operations in Uganda. We have operations in Southeast Asia, Central America, on our border here in Mexico. And just really had a front row seat to watch light hit darkness. I mean, just see the goodness of God. The Bible says where evil abounds, grace does much more. And you see a bunch of things that break your heart forever. But you also see life in the midst of that. And, whether we're in Belize, and Belize is a country of 400,000 people. Well, half of that population is under the age of 20. And man, we're doing some powerful things, and it's not really well networked. And I'm thinking, man, what if we can build some of this together and build some infrastructure that actually can do some robust things? What does that look like? And, then you go to Uganda, and you meet Peace and Patrick. And Peace is a woman that was born there in this jungle in Uganda. And she said, man, I went to the UK, got educated, met my husband, Patrick. He was in the oil business there, and they've got a great life in the UK. And she felt the Lord call her back to Uganda. And she's like, you sure? Yeah. And I'm like, man, this is pretty comfortable over here, God.
2 cars.
That's right, 1.7 kids. Mm-hmm. So long story short, she moves back to Uganda, where she's from, and the Lord puts on her heart to build an orphanage there and a school. So she starts with a school, and she builds a school. No kids are coming. And she gets out into the area, and she's like, hey, I built this school. And they're like, hey, cool, but we don't need school. When our kids grow up and they're old enough to hold a machete, they go out to the fields, and they're probably going to die with a pretty similar machete in their hands 50 years later. We don't need school for that. We've done that forever. Good luck. She's like, well, what if I come by and get your kids? I'm like, so started with 1 or 2 kids, and in that time, there's 2 witch doctors that control that area, and they're sacrificing children. They're doing all the things that you just can't even really imagine. And we're in the midst of all that. And she's just telling me, that's what the mission that I've been given. And so she builds a school. She starts bringing kids to school. 1 kid turns to 2 kids, to now she's got 4 schools there. And now she's got all of these, I call it James 127 model orphanages. So she's got these widows taking care of these kids that don't have families. And I'm like, man, how beautiful is that? And what even happened in that space was, now those 2 witch doctors are gone. Now there's a little 23-year-old pastor that's just banging the word down in this little bitty building that's just blowing up with people who want to understand what in the world's going on here. And Jesus is changing things. And so what I even got to see is, man, I thought it would be generational from that child down, but those children, the love of Jesus and the hearts of those children actually changed their entire families upstream and downstream. And so just got to see all that kind of stuff, and got to see God do such amazing things. But at the same time, after doing that for a few years, I couldn't get away from my phone, that Amber Alert, Amber Alert, Amber Alert, just all the things you see on the news and media of what's going on here. And there's just a stirring in my spirit. And I just kept, looking into it and praying into it. I'm like, Lord, what is it? And I heard locate and recovery. Like, who's locating and recovering these kids? I don't know. Like, here's what I do know. It looks different from country to country. It looks different from city to city. Like, I don't have a grid for it here.
Yeah.
So I talked about it with my wife, and I said, babe, this is what I'm hearing the Lord say. What do you think? And over a couple week time, we said, you know what? I believe we should move forward with that. And I said, okay, you understand this is just a vision. There's not a lot of monetary things coming through this vision right now. So how long are we willing to do this? Like, are we willing to die on this hill, or are we going to give up everything that we have and look at each other and think, what have we done? Or are we willing to give up everything we have, no matter how this works out, and know that we did the right thing? Because it got real.
Yeah.
And thankfully, she said, I'm in. I'm all in. And we both went all in with just this vision, with not a lot of understanding yet. And so I come from a project management background, right? Working at Powerhouse, my sweet spot is figuring out a plan and executing a plan, looking at that plan, measuring success. Let's determine what the KPIs are, and man, let's tighten up some things. Let's just get better and better and better as we keep doing this. So my mission in that moment was to not do that. My mission in that moment was I'm going to share the vision that God's given me with everybody that I can come in contact with, and let's just see what the Lord does. And that is hard for me. Not a lot of control in that. And I love control.
Yeah. I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Because similar, just like, no, we plan, execute, crush.
Yes.
Let go of it.
Yes. Put the skin on the wall.
Yeah. Skin on the wall, get another one.
Yep.
We call it gold stars. Ashley says, oh, you just got a gold star. Go get another one.
Yes.
Like just blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh God, look at I'm so nervous right now.
And so man, we got to share with a lot of amazing people who are in this space. Traffic 911 in Dallas is an advocate for children. Man, if you want to get involved with the organization that's doing crazy cool things for children, Traffic 911 is doing amazing things. Rescue Her is someone that's doing the same thing for adults. They're doing amazing. We just got to share with so many people. And what we wound up finding is, hey, look, you need to. We got to meet some people. And I don't know if you guys remember during this time, you remember the Super Bowl where Brady's playing the Patriots.
Yes.
Like, doesn't make sense.
No, yeah, right.
Brady's playing the Patriots. And man, I either heard this in that moment or this thought came, the competition for credit kills. And I got that during that time. And I'm like, I don't understand that. I shared that with some of my friends thinking I was going to blow their mind. And they all looked at me like I had three eyes. So I knew it was for me, right? It's one of those things that's just for me. And they say, you know what? You need to meet this guy. And so I drive down to Houston and I meet this guy. This guy's name is JB. And I meet JB, and my wife goes down with me. We're going to embed in a motel in Southwest Houston. Houston's one of the most trafficked cities in the entire country. Bissonnet Street is second to Figueroa Street in LA in terms of number of trafficking offenses.
Really?
They're running an op down there, so the landscape looks a little different right now, but historically that's been the case for over 100 years.
Wow.
And so we're going to embed in a motel. We're going to see where it's going down. We're going to see what it looks like. We're going to be in the thick of it. So we get to this motel. My wife looks at me like, really? I'm like, yeah, this is where we're going to be. So JB calls, and he's at the IHOP next door. And I go over there to meet JB. And man, he's just a big, gentle giant of a guy. And I meet his partner, and his partner looks straight up homeless, like just straight up homeless. I'm looking at my wife like, I'm not sure what we're getting into here, but later on, I can understand why. And so 30 minutes after sitting down, JB's phone pings. And he said, you ready? I said, yeah. What are we ready for? He said, I said, yeah. What are we ready for? I guess I should maybe reverse that. But he said, man, we've been looking for a 15-year-old, and our phone just pinged in a motel 10 minutes from here. He said, are you ready to go? I said, let's go. So my wife and I jump in his truck, and he sends his partner down to get a room there. And he's mentally homeless, and he's got this vodka bottle full of water, and he does his deal, and he can get intelligence. JB can't. We're set up in a mall parking lot adjacent to this motel looking at it. And he's just showing, this is a Wednesday night. It's not even a Friday night. He's just showing me the lay of the land. You see all these cars pulling in, pulling out every 15, 20 minutes. Those are dope deals. And there were a lot of them. And he said, you see all these cars pulling in, pulling out every 45 minutes to an hour. Those are human trafficking deals. And you're seeing these women walk in. You're seeing these men walk out. And I've seen it, but I've never seen it. Does that make sense?
For sure.
Never had an eye to see. And I'm just like, wow. So we sit there for an hour and a half, and all of a sudden JB's phone rings. He's like, this is his partner. His partner says, man, I've got eyes on her. She's in the stairwell. And they set up a sting. We're going to meet her at the Texaco as a John. And so Texaco's 50 feet from this little motel. So we pull over to that Texaco, and we actually pass this little girl on the way there. She's 15 years old, and she looks just like my daughter. She's a little bitty thing that doesn't even look.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't even look 15. And we pull up to the gas pump, and I said, you know what? I guess I'll get out like I'm getting gas. And he's just been there a million times, and he just gets out with this meekness and this boldness, and just walks up to her, and I walk up to her too. And he says, Destiny, we know who you are. Everything's going to be okay. Your mom's right around the corner. If you'd like to get in our car, you can get in our car. And she was nonverbal, and she gets in the car, and we're sitting there, and I'm like, it's just, I'm just watching all this happen, and his truck is this old beater of a truck, and her mom gets there, they unite, they both get in our car. It gets real at that moment, because I don't know if you understand the hierarchy of how this game works, but the pimp has a bottom. The bottom is at the bottom of the totem pole. The bottom is in charge of the business, in charge of all the girls in that stable. And so the bottom's in that gas station. She gets in her Mercedes, blacked out windows, fake tags. She's giving us the stare down like she wants to kill all of us. We've probably cost that trafficker around $300,000 a year with that little girl. Her story was 6 days prior, her parents were divorced. Her dad didn't have any rules. Her mom had a bunch of rules. It's time to go back with mom, and she didn't want to go back with mom, so she bailed. In 6 days, the streets found her, knocked her, drugged her, had her for sale in a motel where she was probably sold between 15 and 20 times a day. So that's what it looked like in her life, and her name was Destiny. And so that's how, really – we're sitting in the car waiting for HPD to respond. HPD sends a detective out, and the detective's first word was JB, and JB's been on scene with a lot of these people. He says, "Thank you for making my job so easy." Like, I'm in the truck and I see that. I'm like, man, like, it's just resonating. When you start studying out human trafficking in the United States, you see a couple things. You see NGOs are doing some crazy cool things. In 2021, I did a study where the top 4 NGOs, non-governmental organizations, are taking in over $70 million a year, and they're doing some really cool preventive things, and they're doing a lot of cool restorative care things. But just through the grid of who's locating and recovering these kids, it equaled about 2,260 recoveries, and that's included international recoveries. So I'm like, big gap there, right? If you read, in 2017, the University of Texas released a study that said there's 79,000 kids being sex trafficked at any given time in the state of Texas.
Hold on a minute.
Yep.
79,000 in the state of Texas?
Yes, that's what the University of Texas said. I'm not going to hang my hat, statistics.
Yeah, sure, but still.
If the number's anywhere close to that, we got a big problem.
If it's a fifth of that number, that's a staggering.
That's right. And so,
oh man,
just understanding that, and then studying out law enforcement. Law enforcement, what you'll find is the tip of the spear in this fight. But what you also find is they're under-resourced, and they're under tremendous pressure to perform, right? And and so, man, so haven't understood that, and if the competition for credit kills, that means collaboration with law enforcement might actually do something. And if I'm in it not for the credit, but actually for freedom, what could that look like, right? And so I'm like, JB, how do you know this all over? And he takes me back to our little motel, and he says, Matt, what time is it? I said, it's 6:17. He says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He said, there's 17 girls posted for sale at 6:17 in Houston, Texas right now. And he shows me. This isn't dark web. This is the web, just like any of us can get on. Like, wow. And then we drive out to Bissonnette Street, and we see, 125 women working the blade, and a line of cars that's probably 200 or 300 cars long, bumper to bumper, that are shopping for these girls. And I'm like, man, I am not in Mexico. I am not in a third world country. I'm in my own backyard. And it just hit. And really, I said, JB, what would happen? I said, how do you do this? I said, do you do fundraising events? Like, what do you do? And he's like, fundraising events. He's like, I'm an ops guy. What are you talking about? He's like, man, I wasn't looking for this. It found me. And there's a big story to go with that. But he said, I said, well, what would it look like if someone could come beside you and help you? And, JB said, well, I live in a 900 square foot house. My wife is a school teacher. I do some side hustles like LTC trainings and things like that so that when I have more money, I'm able to be out here longer. When I don't have quite enough, this is my cross to bear. And I'm like, oh my God, I could get behind that. I mean, just indigenous people already doing the work, which was our model at Answer International. Let's find some people that are already doing it and provide resources to be a force multiplier for them. And so I'm like, well, what would happen if we could take care of that operational responsibility? And he started just talking a lot. And then at the end of it, he said, his eyes got real big, and he said, I could rescue more kids. And that's really where Freed People was birthed, was in the streets of Houston. And the premise behind Freed People is, man, the freedom that Christ has given me, Galatians 5:1 says, we've been freed to free others. There's a responsibility. There's a conviction in our spirit, in my spirit, that says, I've been freed to free others. So what does that look like? And so really, Freed People was born out of that moment I don't need the credit. But you know what? I love freedom because I've been freed.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to carry that same freedom fearlessly for others. And so that's really how it was born. You fast forward and it's grown since then. But yeah.
There's a like outside looking in on what you saw. I've always wondered, because I've heard about freed people for quite a while from our mutual connections, and rescuing a child. I thought of like a special ops mission, guns blazing type situation, but it's not that complicated. There's people. You have JB that is integral to things, but at the end of the day, it was just we're here. You can leave. And you can leave with us. And I never even thought of that, like something that peaceful. It could go down like that.
You bet. And imagine this. Imagine if we can use technology and other resources to locate, and then we can call law enforcement to come in for the recovery. Imagine if they're burdened with time, right? Like they don't have enough time in the day to get what they need to get done that day.
The police force?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if we can locate them and build enough credibility with law enforcement. Well, they'll trust us when we say we see them, that they're going to respond.
You're efficient.
That's exactly
it
right.
Makes them efficient.
And so what happens with that is a lot of our calls in the beginning were families. We serve families free of charge. We consider it nearly predatory to charge a family that a family will mortgage everything they have to find their child. So we don't charge families, but what we found is after time, where the competition, the credit wasn't needed. We don't need the credit. In fact, the more we're seeing, the less effective we can be.
Right.
And so what happened in that is there's a few law enforcement agencies that really found value in that, and now most of our calls are to support law enforcement in that.
So the tip line's coming from both ends. Then the families and the police force is like, hey, could you chase this down and let us know when we're ready to roll?
That's it.
So how big is this? Well, that's the wrong way to ask the question. What are the areas that you guys are serving with this sort of resources?
So now 73 to 75% of the state's population is in the triangle between Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, and Austin area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've done is we've developed 3 teams within that area. We're also involved with the national, the North Texas Trafficking Task Force. We that's led by Homeland Security. We work with them as well. So we've got kind of 4 teams locating and recovering all the time. Like we're not reactive. We're not waiting for a call. I left last night. We had helped law enforcement recover a 16-year-old. Right now, that guy is left that area to locate a 12-year-old, and that's where he's at today. And so we're out there doing it proactively. What we do is if you'll let me share, we do
please.
is we redeem destinies. Destiny was the first girl. What Freed People does is redeem destinies and restore families. And the way that we do that is we have outreach teams that are meeting these ladies where they're at. I don't know if you've seen street prostitutes, and I don't know what goes through your head. We're not far from the major track here in Dallas, where we sit right now. We're about 3/4 of a mile from there. Our teams are there all the time. And so I didn't even understand it till I really got in it. But as you get to know these ladies, even the adults, it's not like they choose that life. There wasn't a girl who was a little bitty baby and dreamed of being a prostitute when she got older.
Right.
But what happens is you get to know these ladies and they experience trauma, probably sexual trauma at an early age, and they just kept having birthdays. And their only guilt was being born in the condition, in the family, and the environment they were born.
Mm.
And so you've got our outreach teams are meeting these ladies where they're at. Typically, that's going to be on the track or the blade where these women are working. And then we have location and recovery teams that are locating and recovering these teams. And then we financially partner with safe homes for the restorative care. So that's kind of our 3-pronged approach on how we look at it.
Yeah, so maybe now's the time to ask those questions. But so when you have an opportunity to, I don't even know the right words, but to redeem a destiny,
mm-hmm.
and you pull someone out from where do they go? What do they do? How does it, what now what?
Yeah. So, do we have like 4 hours today, or like how much time do we have?
An infinite amount of hard drive space. Keep going.
So right now they go 80% of the children that we recover out of the CPS or foster care system. They're an easy target for you.
No. Say that again.
Yeah. So
Did you hear that? Did you hear what he said?
So 4 out of 5 kids we recover out of CPS. And if you think about that, if sex trafficking, they want to put a number on it that it's a $150 billion problem and that there's 40 million slaves. Well, if there's that much money in it, do you think they have a business model? Like this isn't all by accident, right? There's business models. And, when these kids have grown up without a family, and they've been tossed to and fro between quote unquote families. And when number one, they're already susceptible, right? They don't have that relationship that we probably did growing up. They don't have a family out there overturning every rock to find them. Then when they age out and they're missing or they've run away, they just close that. So now there's no one even looking for them. Ooh. So now they have no family. There's nobody looking for these kids. And it's like, so I've seen some stats that say 40% of kids, a lot of these kids that age out are dropped off at a homeless shelter. And so I've seen a stat that says 40% of them will be contacted by a trafficker within the first 48 hours. Why? Because it's a business.
Right.
That's part of the business model.
Mm-hmm. You got a business development team.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
It's Nakia Douglas, man. Remember?
Yeah. Well, for sure. Yeah. Part
of even knowing that exists.
Yeah. Part of that story coming together right there. But yeah. Yes. Sorry, I interrupted. But keep going. It's
no. And so some of those kids will have to go back to the hell that they ran from. That's the uncomfortable truth. And then some of those kids we can advocate, and their families can work with them to go to a long-term or residential treatment center that can provide services. And so that's what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a forever work in progress.
That's right.
Because that's a big problem.
It's a big problem.
And growing. I mean, I can't imagine that you probably know the numbers and the trajectory of time, but my guess is it's not going backwards yet. I mean,
no. In fact, that study was released in 2017 that there's 79,000 kids being trafficked. Think about our border since then. And so, like even the kids we see, these kids, there's some myths that all these kids are coming through our border and those are the kids that we're recovering. They're not. They're kids that come out of probably every school district in America, right? And Texas has been impacted, but these kids are our kids. Mm-hmm. And these kids, like these traffickers are experts, right? They're truly experts. It's a $150 billion business. They have experts that are waiting for our daughter to get on social media and say, my parents suck. Man, they did this to me last night and it's so unfair. Man, and then he's, red flag, there it is. Man, I'm sorry that you got to deal with that. Your parents are so bad.
They don't get you.
That's right. Yeah. And then over the 30, 60, 90 days of doing that, building relationship, all of a sudden, this guy's meeting every need that she's ever needed met with this masterful psychology that's worked with them so long. And so this is complex psychology. This is not just elementary stuff. And so what typically happens are these kids are groomed out of a place into a situation that's just not good. And so, you've got the whole Stockholm syndrome, you've got the trauma bond, you've got all the things that happen with that. And these children, the frontal part of their brain's not even developed to really be able to understand or process what's going on. And so they're just easy targets. And these guys are forcing them, coercing them, manipulating them to make a profit.
And you go back to 2017, what's happened since then? Social media skyrocketed to all the different platforms. And now AI.
That's right.
So now instead of that org chart of people doing that psychological warfare, it's going to be a freaking robot.
Yeah.
Might already be.
Yeah.
Right. But it's already stored. It's built to have this conversation, which force multiplies the enemy.
That's it.
All right. So I'm going to go back to where we started, which was a lot of people listen. A couple of people listen to this podcast, but they are, to your point earlier, like our listeners are doers, producers. So what, right? Yeah. There's a lot of work to be done out there. People are listening, kind of get 45, 50 minutes in and thinking like, well, what can I do? What do I do? How do I help? And I'm sure there's a lot of different answers to that. So you take me wherever you want. But what do I do?
I assume you both are dads.
Oh yeah.
99% of the kids that we recover have daddy issues. Their dads weren't there. Typically their dads weren't there. They've had family problems if they weren't trafficked by their family. And so I'm going to tell you, and there's the nuclear family, nothing beats it. But when men win, everyone wins. Like if I'm the dad that I'm called to be and I'm the husband I'm called to be, guess who are going to win? My children. And guess what happens when I'm not? Like it's that same thing with David we just talked about.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I'm just going to tell you when that's the number, like the root of these children is broken relationships, right? I mean, and typically that broken relationship happens when they're tiny, when their father, their mother didn't stand up to be the father and mother that they're called to be. But I'm going to tell you when men and women get it, and we're not seeing a lot of kidnappings at the Galleria. That's not what's happening. These kids are vulnerable and they're susceptible to being groomed by somebody that's business is dependent on getting them away from anyone who loves them. So number one, let's be the women and men that we were created to be. Secondly, men, whether it's driven by church or whether it's driven by community, look at the number of kids in foster care. Break that out per county, let's get comfortable being uncomfortable, meeting the need for these children. I don't know if that looks like all of us adopting, like, let me see here. I've got the numbers here with me.
Just how many kids are waiting. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. So they're in care somehow, whether it's foster care, whether it's at a motel with CPS. And then, so as of March 7th, Tarrant County has 784 kids in care. Dallas County has 789. Johnson County, 85. Ellis County, 38 kids in care. Parker County, 60 kids in care. Wise County, 24 kids in care. Collin County, 132 kids in care. Man, my core conviction and our huge opportunity is what if in Dallas County, some churches got together where they have thousands of members and said, look, 789 kids are orphans. And James 1:27 says, pure undefiled religion meets that need. It's not anything we need to pray about. Like it's mandated. So what if we just say, you know what? Not on our watch. What if churches or communities in Dallas County said, you know what? We're going to take that back. You know what? We're not going to be recovering them later with added complex trauma. We're going to be like, what do you want? Like, what do we want? We want relationship. That's what these kids want. That's all they want. Like they don't want they just want somebody to love them and believe in them. And when this trafficker comes in and says, I love you and I believe in you, man, they may have never heard that before.
Right. That answer was a hard right turn for some that was waiting to see with freed people. How do we get help? And then you just got uppercut. That's how you help. They don't get there. They don't get to that point where you're at the stakeout.
Yeah. Like help me go out of business.
Yeah, right. You said it more elegantly.
I mean, it's the truth. Like let's stand up and take that back. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just there. We're talking kind of weave that or pull that thread through. We're talking like root cause analysis. Like stop solving a symptom, solve a problem.
That's right.
Yeah. That is a left curve or left turn out of the question, but it's like, right.
You look at the per capita and you could talk about communities, but you can also talk about churches. And I don't have the numbers with me, but you look at the number of churches in Dallas County relative to the number of kids in care, it shouldn't be a problem. Like it comes down to 2 or 3 kids per congregation. Like, man, surely we can do that with 1,000, 2,000 people there. Not everybody needs to adopt, but you know what, man? Part of the body solve is I can't adopt, but man, I can I can help buy groceries. I can help take your kid to, the doctor. The body can be the body in this solve, but our kingdom of comfort doesn't allow us the opportunity to see the need, probably.
Yeah.
And then like there's this hue that doesn't see human trafficking and that pain, because you know what it requires when you see it? It requires you to lay your head down on the pillow at night and make a decision if you're going to get involved or if you're not. Like everyone says there's a stigma. It's not a stigma. It's just, do we want to confront that and face that and make a decision relative to that?
Well, when I like about the key word that caught my attention is congregation. If a group of people, you pick up X, I'll pick up Y, you pick up Z, and not one of us can carry it all ourselves because of what we have on our plate, but 1/3 of it,
yeah,
I bet I could carve 1/3 of it.
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're talking about from a church standpoint.
That's it.
You don't have to bring every kid in to your house specifically, but maybe your thing is clothes, maybe your thing is money, maybe your thing is food, maybe your thing is actually shelter.
That's right.
But that's uncomfortable. I got to get to. I got to get air in my tires. I just got to keep my 2 cars and my 1.7 kids and my 401k. And,
Yeah.
But where does it start? Like a thought that turns into a conversation. You might not be a pastor, but if you're going to church, maybe it's a conversation you can have with a pastor.
Man, like, here's what I want to know. I'm like, I don't know where, someone might go to church, but I'd love to talk to leadership and see what they're doing about it. Like, if James 1:27 didn't end with a question mark, that means we don't have to pray about it. So if they're doing something about it, can we help them do more?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not doing something about it, can we educate them? And if they already know about it and they're not doing something about it, God help them. Like, I'm not against a big church, right? I love church. Church is a big part of my life. But man, if you're going to grow this church and make this big, beautiful church and this grand coffee experience at the expense of widows and orphans, man, God help you.
Yeah. Well, it's comfort.
Yeah.
Is comfort the unifying theory? I wrote it is like, yeah, but we got to have a coffee shop because otherwise people won't show up. And if people won't show up, then they won't tithe. If they don't tithe, then we can't keep the lights on. So, coffee shop.
Yeah. And we've seen some churches, step up and do amazing things. So the opportunity is there. The opportunity is there. And I think a lot of the time let me just point the finger at me. I don't get the words right. Like, I want to be able to express to these churches and communities, if you don't get involved, this is what it looks like. And if you do get involved, this is what it looks like. Like, I want to be able to speak that word with clarity, because I just can't help but think we haven't gotten that right, because I don't believe churches are looking at the need and saying no. I believe that they don't understand the significance of the weight that they carry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's heavy.
Youth ministry at Life Church this Wednesday, they're doing human trafficking night.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, the first time they rolled that out, I was like, what are we doing here? But I didn't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was like, that seems like a little much to be pumping on a 6th grader, but it's preventative.
Yeah.
It's not on somebody's radar. And they brought up very specific examples in Mansfield.
Yeah. I mean,
this isn't far away.
No, what you guys are doing in Mansfield is meeting the need before we have to recover them. I mean, our dream is to go out of business.
Right.
I mean, like what you guys are doing with youth, whether they've got a family and things are great, or whether they don't, and you're meeting a need, and that's like fighting human trafficking is what that is. Like that's fighting all of that future trauma for that kid. Hopefully, will be removed because you've been Jesus to that kid.
Well, all the credit goes to them. Like the Mansfield example they gave, they were talking about an incident in Mansfield where the mom ran to the bathroom, left the kid inside the car. Happened in Mansfield. It's like in the church that we're talking through. This isn't foreign.
Yeah. It's
right here, happening all the time.
Yep.
Well, I think there is a complete misconception that the human trafficking is like, oh, that's an overseas problem. I think that I don't know that people appreciate that it is no, it's right there.
Yeah.
You drive by it every day and you just look the other direction because it's uncomfortable to think about it.
And you don't have the eyes to see it. Just like I saw that motel, and I've seen thousands of those motels in the past, but I've never had an eye to see it. But once you have an eye to see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you How do you separate yourself from that at night before you go to bed?
Man,
On a
Ooh,
given
that's
night.
tough, man.
like the win is in yes. Like that's how we gauge wins. Like I know that that's not a corporate, thing to like 10 years ago I'd been like, yeah, come on, that's like an out for not really driving success. But like the win is yes with no strings attached. The win is we're going to go fearlessly lay our life down to try and serve these children and these women and children. And I'm not sure what the output is going to be, but the output doesn't determine how successful we are. What determines success is, did we say yes? And so to some people that sounds like an out, but for a hard worker who's like I'm going to naturally have to get over producing my whole life. Like that's how I measure myself is what, but our win is actually just saying yes and going out there. The need is huge. We will never rescue our way out of this. The way that this is going to end is what we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well, this week you have the one gala coming up, which we were going to pump tickets for, but you sold it out at the Fort Worth Zoo. So that's pretty cool. Theme of it is just exposure, I'm assuming, to what's going on. More of this.
Yeah. It's called Be the One Gala. And man, we're blessed to be able to have a lot of our teams there, our outreach teams, our locate and recovery teams, some of the safe homes that we partner with are going to be there. Law enforcement's going to be there. So, if you really want to have, and unfortunately we sold it out, but it's an opportunity to talk to people about what the problem is and what recovering these kids actually looks like. There's a lot of people doing some innovative, crazy, cool things in different spaces. There's just not a lot of people with the specific focus that we have. So if you're interested in that one lane, man, yeah. So next year we'd love to have you out.
Yeah. And in the meantime, freedpeople.org.
Freedpeople.org. That's it.
Yep. And there's statistics up there.
Yep.
But it's nothing like hearing this conversation. You can kind of, and we talked about that about a church before we got on air, where those words can kind of just pass you by, especially on a website. You're looking, I see some numbers tallied up. Yeah. Hearing these stories, destiny.
Man, isn't that like our phone? You just scroll through it and we experience things without experiencing things. And nearly the product of that is numbness, right? Like you see things that are horrific, but you're okay with it. And you just become more desensitized to it.
I don't know where this falls in the story, but you said it early, like evangelical ways. One is experiential. That story about saying nothing and leading that person to Jesus. Who was that person? And tell the story for listeners.
Yeah. So I wasn't involved with that, but
sure.
It was, so a guy named Jamie Winship. I don't know if, I've really studied that identity, and he's kind of a leading voice in that movement, but his name's Jamie Winship. He was a New York cop, rose through the ranks, cop of the year in New York. And then he goes on to have a CIA history that's just unbelievable. And he's so successful. They send him to the most dangerous places in the world, Middle East. I mean, just everywhere you can imagine. And his whole premise is, let's do this identity exchange. Like, I want to know who you are. Like, who are you? And he leads these terrorists out to the desert around a fire. And he says, who are you? Well, I'm a Muslim. No, that's your religion. Like, who are you? And long story short, what he's seen in that is once they understand who they are, sometimes they don't even pick up their weapons when they leave because they don't need to fight anymore because they're not that person. But what that looks like is he's in the Middle East. He's a white man, white family, Jewish descent from his wife in a Middle Eastern country. So his kids went to school with a bunch of kids that didn't see things the way that they saw things. And the way that they talk about Jesus there is they'll go out and share. And what that sharing looks like is a great example of it is there's a Muslim atheist. Like, not all Muslims believe in Allah. Like there's Muslims that are atheists, right? And so there's a Muslim atheist, and he's got his PhD. His training was from Moscow. He's a Jordanian. And he says, I don't believe in Jesus. so tell me why you believe in Jesus and what that looks like, to one of his young kids that he's kind of grooming and training. And this kid's like, well, I don't really know. That's a hard question, but what if I just introduce you to him? And the dude's like, okay. So then he leads them over to Jamie, and Jamie's like, man, if anybody's going to get thrown in jail, I tell them all to bring them to me. So if anybody's going to get thrown in jail, I'll be the one. And then they can be like, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Uh-huh.
And so Jamie says, okay, so let's pray. And they're going to get down on their knees and do just like, and so they get down, and he just puts his arm on this guy and he says, God, thank you for being a good father. Lord, I just pray that you would speak to my friend. My friend wants to know you. Would you introduce yourself? And then he doesn't say anything for 30 seconds. And all of a sudden, the back of this guy that his arm's on just starts kind of convulsing. And the guy starts sobbing. And he's like, hey, what happened? He said, I had a dream. Like, I had a dream that I was this infant baby in this mud, and I needed to be clean. And all of a sudden this water came and cleaned me. And Jamie Winship takes him to the scriptures and shows him this similar story. And he's like, that's me. So not a lot of theology, not a lot of apologetics, but just all our relationship in Jesus.
It's an incredible story. And I think a lot of us can get stuck on the theology, including me, from like preventing me from taking a step forward. And that question sometimes can be a scary question. How do you know he's real?
I know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My answer currently is I just seen him show up so much in my life that you can't say otherwise.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
But the add-on can be, but I want you to experience it.
Yeah. That's right. You want to meet him? Like, I've never done that. Like, how cool would that be?
That's a cowboy move right there.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I got a lot of thoughts about that. None of which disagree with it, but just like there's a whole lot of, and I want to go like full apologetics, full theology, full like, well, where's the gifting of the, all that. But I guess to me, the salient point around all of it is you hear those stories a lot in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That's not like, that's a super powerful story. I don't want to take away from it, but that's the way, that is one of the ways like the Lord is working in those areas is through that, like that modality, that like visions and dreams. And like, we've tried like, and this is Stewart speaking, we tried a lot of different ways. What if we just did it like this?
Yeah.
Like just pop. So anyway, I love it. I love those stories.
I agree.
Just,
I mean, the Lord can use anything, but
moves in all different ways, man.
I also think that we've reduced some of that to debate and trying to change somebody as opposed to being light. And I understand.
Yeah, no, I hear that for sure.
And I understand there's great examples of being Jesus both ways. But man, what better experience than getting to experience the love of a good father like that? Like it just challenged me. I agree with you 100%, man. It's not the way.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. God moves in mysterious ways. You don't know all the answers. We all have our, like, the way it works bent, which probably is 100% all wrong, just because you don't know. You can't ever know, like, the infinite wisdom of God. You can't.
Yeah.
But to suggest that he's not moving in these areas, you crazy. Straight crazy.
The takeaway is he'll move through you in his way. Just take a step.
But how freaking scary is that? like, are you gonna have the audacity to believe that God's going to show up in that moment? And if he doesn't, do you take that as failure? Like, is it about you or is it about him?
That's right. You're not chalking up. You're not trying to put points on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
It's simple obedience.
Yeah. Like, I listened to this one guy, he's got this crazy ministry now. And he said, man, and he prays and amazing things happen. He's like, I prayed for 1,000 people before I saw anybody healed.
His
like,
time.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I might've been out after like number 9.
Yeah. 0 for 9. I'm hanging it up.
I'm tapping.
This is not what you had planned. Sorry, buddy. I missed this one. Well, but let me pull that back, right? Because it is like left the 99 to get the 1.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the intention of like the gala is the one.
Sure is. Yeah.
Ashley said it a bunch of different times in different ways, but all you have to do is tip the ball for one person.
Yeah.
You made all the difference in the world. It was all worth it. We've said it on here before.
Yeah.
all it takes is one. It was all worth it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right.
The 100, like what seemed like empty motions and movements and prayers and all of it.
Yeah.
It was all worth it for the one.
It's good. That's right.
So,
Yep. I've been that one.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It was all worth it.
Yep.
Same.
I need to do it again.
Yep.
Man, I got a lot. We keep going. I got infinite hard drive space. I got to ask 1,000 more questions, but it kind of feels like we come to a spot where I'm going to ask this question, which is kind of how we end usually.
Yeah.
You get a lot of cool stories, man, and a lot of experiences. But like, what's the one big way? We say the one big thing? What's the big takeaway? What's the like? Tell me, Matt. What's it all about? One big thing.
My life changed when I conceptually understood who I was as a man of God, but then prayed a prayer with a pen and paper in my hand that said, God, who do you say I am? Jesus, who do you say I am? And when I understand my identity is to be a beloved son, but my DNA says I'm something specific, what is that? And then I believe that I'm a sheep and I hear his voice. And I believe in that moment, I heard his voice. And when he told me who I am, it made a lot of things make sense historically, and it put my future in perfect perspective. Not that everything's easy and I got it all figured out, but I understand the main thing better than I ever have.
There you go.
Still got a ways to go.
Yeah.
It's a process.
I don't know.
Matt, dude, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for telling your story.
Yeah, thanks
you
for
for
having me.
encouraging us in
Bet.
various ways and challenging us to be better. I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for hanging out.